And of course my camera does not work.
Who's that talking?
I am the floating head of doom. That's awesome.
Oh,
Wow. Awesome tech fail, Google.
use your
Use your
imagination.
imagination. I pretty much look the same. Uh, Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's Learning Space. I am your headless host, Nicole Gallucci. I will try and futz around with the camera here and see if I can figure out what's gone wrong. It was working just fine a minute ago, of course. Visible on the broadcast are my co-host, Georgia Bracey.
Hey, everybody. Welcome.
Hi, Georgia. And we have our special guest, Anita Heyward.
Hi.
Hello, and we can hear and see you both just fine, which is excellent. I'd like to say hello to everybody who's up in the comments in the Q&A section. We have a hello from Douglas. We have a how was convergence from Michael Jobin. It was awesome. I can ramble about that some other time. Maybe I'll do that next week. I don't know. We don't have a show scheduled for next week. I can ramble about that or find some video clips. Guido says, good evening from miserably wet and waterlogged Germany. So sorry to hear that. And hi, everyone from Nancy Graziano. So as usual, you know, such as the weeks when you can see me, you can comment and interact with us using the Q&A app. If you're watching this on YouTube or on Google+, you can watch this live and click on the little yellow, I think it's yellow still, banner that says join the conversation in the Q&A app. And that will take you to the Q&A app where everybody is chatting and leaving messages. And yeah, Nancy says I'm going to have to go to Georgia's office. I might do that. Although it's easier to drive from the one we started with. So yeah, you guys can. What's that?
I said we've done that before, though.
I have done that before. I have completely bailed. I'm going to try unplugging and replugging in the camera. If that doesn't work, I will bail and join Georgia next door. So yeah, join in with questions and comments. This week, like I said, we're talking with Anita Heyward about. Sorry, I keep wanting to say Howard. I don't know why. Some of you were not as sleep deprived as I was, and may remember her from the Hangout-a-thon. I think I was just heading off to bed as you were arriving. So we are going to talk some about science communication, science journalism, because you have a great history with that, and a little bit about the Google Learner X Prize. So maybe you want to start telling us a little bit about your background in science and science communication.
Okay, so it was all a bit of an accident, really. I studied physics and space science at university, and then I did a master's in Earth observation science, and I was all set to get a proper job, analysing data, doing SAR interferometry, and being a normal person. And then that fell through, and just at that time, I was at the University of Leicester. And just at that time, they were starting development on the National Space Centre, which was a Millennium project. So this was about 1998. And they had kind of like architect's plans, but that was about it for this amazing visitor attraction, all about space, the first one, the only one in the UK. And so so I got a part-time job working there allegedly for 6 months, and that kind of turned into 3 years doing all kinds of bits and pieces. And it was an amazing training because I got to do all kinds of things. I was their curator, so I got to put together their collection, and I got to run around the world and buy rockets and spacesuits off people, as you do.
Oh my gosh.
And I also set up a news gallery online, and we did a lot of exhibition development and developing interactives, and yeah, doing content for this news site. And so it was an amazing experience, and it kind of gave me a really broad spectrum of science communication, from direct interaction with the public to working with journalists, working with scientists, trying to condense black holes down to 150 words, or warp speed, what have you. So it was a big challenge. But then when the Space Centre opened, it was not quite as exciting. So I left and I went freelance, using sort of the contacts that I had with the media, and with the science community and space industry, and I've been doing that pretty much ever since, trying to really sort of promote the UK's and Europe's involvement in space, which is and mainly in planetary science. And then more recently, I've kind of got to do some fun stuff with the Google Lunar X Prize and different kinds of people who are now looking to make their own mark in space.
Wow, that's a lot of fantastic experience. How much of what you do is writing versus actually speaking to people in public? Is it a mix, or do you lean one way or the other?
A lot of it's writing. So a lot of it is. I mean, I have several jobs at the moment. The Google Lunar X Prize is one, but I also work for Europlanet, which is a European network of planetary scientists. So we have probably more planetary scientists in Europe than you do in the States, but they're kind of spread by across 20 countries and however many languages, and so trying to sort of bring that community together and get out the message of what they're doing is sort of has been one of my main jobs for about 8 years now. And that is mainly talking to scientists and then sort of writing press releases on presentations that they're doing or papers that they've written or submitted to journals. And yeah, for the X Prize, it's really just kind of finding out what the teams are doing and trying to get those stories out there. And I also work for the Royal Astronomical Society on their National Astronomy meeting, which we just had a couple of weeks ago. And again, that's sort of finding out what the latest things are in astronomy and getting those stories out to journalists. So it's a lot of writing with the occasional visit to schools or talking to people just to kind of remind myself that there are humans out there.
Wow. So when you're thinking about writing something, tell us a little bit about, maybe how you sort of get it together in your mind and how it's different from, basically scientific writing or other types of writing. What particular things, do you try to keep in mind?
It's finding that way into it. It's finding that sort of initial headline or first sentence that, sometimes you read a paper and maybe it takes you a couple of days just to kind of filter it through, and then all of a sudden something hits you and you think, yes, that's the story, that's the way into it. Mm-hmm. And I mean, a lot of what I have to do is kind of reading through a lot of abstracts or a lot of papers, and trying to work out which are the ones that people are going to find interesting, which are the ones that are going to be most appealing. And so, I mean, with that, it's quite difficult because a lot of the most important science results are under embargo for, the big journals, so Science and Nature, and they have their own regulations and they don't want to know about meetings and other things going on. So it's not always the big science that we're looking to communicate. A lot of the time it's sort of things that just generally people might find quite interesting. So technology stories generally do quite well. So sort of things like, designing boats for Titan, or shields to radiation shields to protect astronauts on trips to Mars. I mean, there's a lot of research that goes on that sort of has other kind of applications that maybe are peripheral to the day-to-day stuff that the scientists are working on, but it provides kind of a good story or a good hook for getting into that area of research. And anything with great pictures, great videos. I mean, solar stuff is fantastic at the moment because the imagery is just so amazing, and really accessible. Whether you want to know anything about the sun, whether you want to kind of actually delve into how it's all kind of actually working, just on a level anybody can appreciate pictures from solar imagery or a lot of the planetary stuff too.
So I happened to bring my laptop today.
Nicole's kind of back.
I happened to bring my laptop today, so I can use that as backup. Oh, what kind of things? So I also enjoy bringing. I mean, the big stories are easy to hit, but what do you personally like out of the stories that don't always make the mainstream that you like to bring forth?
I really, I mean, there's a broad spectrum, and what is nice to be able to do is to kind of get at least one story kind of representative from each of the branches of science, say, covered at a conference. But yeah, I mean, it's so different. I mean, one of the wonderful things about space is that you get to cover such a broad range of topics. You know, you're really ranging from biology all the way over to kind of like software engineering and everything in between. So what's great is that you have that diversity. You have the really visual, really beautiful things that it's really just kind of partly about sort of just saying, look at this image, appreciate the wonders of the universe, and this is what we think is going on behind it. Mm-hmm. But you know, it's just been the last 10 years, the last sort of 10, 15 years have just been such a privilege to be involved with in planetary science, because it's just been a revolution. You know, I can remember when I was a child and we kind of like had a Reader's Digest atlas that sort of had, you know, hand-painted pictures of Saturn, and that was kind of what we had, and that was kind of what we knew. And over the last few years, it's just all changed. You know, we've had these amazing missions like Cassini-Huygens, actually showing us in detail and over seasons what our planetary neighbours are like, how they change, how they interact with each other, really kind of getting the sense that we live in this amazing system that all revolves and is in movement all the time, and you know, we are not kind of here on Earth and space is out there. All of it fits together, so all of it affects each different bit of it. So, you know, we have the sun, we have sunlight. I'm kind of wherever I sit at the moment, I seem to have sun streaming through, and I'm dazzling here. But yeah, we also have the solar wind that causes aurora, not just here on Earth, but also on, you know, on Saturn and Jupiter. We're finding out more and more that there are these amazing similarities between our own planet and these other planets, which sort of at first sight look quite disparate. And one of the things that is also really, I find really interesting, is how we can learn from looking at our planetary neighbours to find out more about where we live, how that's evolved, how that might evolve in the future.
So we have a question from Charles Bell asking if you have been writing about or following at all the ISEE-3 reboot project. It was a project to get back in communication with a spacecraft that's been in orbit near the Earth. It was called the Interplanetary Comet Explorer Once Upon a Time. Have you been following that story at all?
I read an article about it probably about a month ago, and you know, I love that. I love that there's still sort of, you know, 70s hardware out there in space that can still be used and can still do stuff. And you know, that I think it's being used for a sort of citizen science project now, and I think that's another really amazing and interesting development over the past few years, that now science and space and missions aren't the prerogative of just governments or universities or academic bodies, that actually anybody can be involved. And if you have the interest, if you have the time, then you can do research, you can talk to satellites, you can build your own satellite and get that launched. You can analyze all kinds of data from the moon and galaxies and all kinds of things. And I mean, the democratization of space, I think, is such a fantastic development, and looks as though it's going to get even more exciting over the next few years.
So you've had experience with press releases and outreach and writing articles. How do you see them all being connected to each other? How is each one different or part of a bigger process?
I've sort of got to the point now where I've been doing this, well, more than 10 years anyway, and And so you do get a real sense of this sort of incremental process of science. You know, every now and then you get a big breakthrough and something really exciting happens. You have a mission that gets somewhere and you see things in a completely different light. But so much of what science is and how science works is a sort of incremental building on we knew this before and now we've got this new bit of information which kind of clarifies that a bit better. And it's quite difficult from a news perspective to really bring that out, because if you've kind of got 2/3 of the picture, then getting that extra third isn't necessarily news. But I mean, that is potentially a lot of work that's gone into it, and a lot of government funding that's been spent on it potentially, and so it still is something that we should be talking about. We should find ways of communicating, and I think the other great development of the last few years is things like this Google Hangout, which means that and Twitter and Facebook and all kinds of social media things, which means that there are many more options for how science can be communicated. But it doesn't just have to be news. It doesn't have to be something which is going to get on into the national newspapers or on TV or on radio. It can be just a scientist kind of talking to you guys and telling you about what it is that they do, why they're doing it, why they love it, and so I think that spectrum is a really good toolbox now that we have to communicate all kinds of different stories and different bits of information in different ways. I mean, the media is not going to go away. We're still going to have, there's still a need for press releases. There still is that channel that works, but now it's kind of supplemented by all these other different things.
Do you find in the last few years or recently, or maybe with the improvement of these technologies, that there has been an increase in interest in these scientific stories, or an increase in the audience, or something, or is it just that we're better? The technology is better for reaching people.
Sorry, I'm just going to. The sun is
sure.
The sun is kind of. I'm very privileged. I'm down in Cornwall at the moment, which is one of the nicest bits of the UK. But and I shouldn't ever, as a British person, complain about sunny days.
Yeah, right.
Just at the moment, lights causing me a bit of a problem.
Never complain about having a window either. Yeah.
Yeah, we had basement offices before this.
Yeah, it's always good to have. It's always good to see some kind of daylight.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting few years in terms of journalism and how that works. I mean, when I first started, it was very much that you put out a press release and there would be lots of interest from national newspapers, well, if you were lucky, and local radio perhaps, and the phone would ring, the landline phone would ring, and you would go and talk to the journalist, or you'd have to go and find somebody and bring them physically to go and use the phone, or go and sit down and have an interview with a scientist. And that doesn't happen anymore. There's been a lot of consolidation in newspapers, in broadcasters. I mean, the BBC used to have many different groups of journalists who would work on different bits, and that's kind of all been condensed down. And there are a lot less science journalists around, and so I have noticed that the pickup from those sort of traditional channels, it has got more difficult. It's more difficult for me to get a story now into the national newspaper than maybe it was 10 years ago. On the other hand, with the internet, we find our stories picked up all over the world in all kinds of languages. So you see a story that you put out in Portsmouth in the UK, and it's picked up in India, in China, in Lithuania, in Brazil, who knows where. So it's changed, and in some ways it's got more difficult, and in some ways it's opened up a whole new spectrum of places where you can get a story out to. So it's it's not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It's just changing and different.
Yeah. So it's a lot of fast-moving change to adapt to, I'm sure, as well. And I'm interested in, what are the more difficult parts of your job?
Often the difficult thing is getting the information out to people.
The interview, or the just however you do it, the questioning.
Yeah, I mean, I think we still things are better, things are improving, but I think there is still a sense amongst some scientists, not all scientists, but some scientists, that outreach is something that it's a distraction. It's something that they don't really need to do. It's something that they don't see why they have to waste their time doing, and so it's kind of low on their list of priorities. And so trying to engage with people to make sure that they actually tell people who pay for what they do, basically, about what it is that they're doing, can still be a bit of a challenge. I mean, things are changing. Things have been changing. With Europlanet, we've run lots of training courses to help the science community sort of understand what it is journalists want from them, who it is they're talking to, how that information gets translated. And I think, a lot of it is just understanding the process and understanding what people want out of it. But it's still not perfect. It's still always a bit of a fight. I mean, at the moment we're just putting together. In Europe, we have this funding program from the European Commission called Horizon 2020, which is 84 billion euros, I think, of funding over the next 5 or so years. Anyway, basically kind of taking us up towards 2020, hence the name. And I'm involved in various bids to do the outreach part of those. And, it's always a fight. We always have to kind of, fight quite fiercely to kind of get that outreach bit in there, make sure that it's kind of there at a significant level, and make sure that the people that we have there doing that work are professionals. It's not something that you can just get your postdoc or your PhD student to do. You actually do need people who have those skills, that experience to do the job in a professional way. And I mean, particularly with things like social media, you need to have people who know what they're doing and know how best to apply those platforms. Yeah, it's an ongoing battle, but we survive.
So you work with scientists to help them, I guess, understand why they should talk to you, right then, and how they should communicate to the press. Do you also help them learn to be better communicators themselves, or is it more through you as the communicator?
I think there is an element of inter-scientist communication as well. I mean, particularly back to Europlanet. I mean, just making sure that all the different parts of the project, all these people who are working on, we have all these activities like going out to planetary analog sites. We have workshops where people identify science goals. We have people having access to sort of state-of-the-art facilities in other countries, and every now and then we sort of have a big meeting and everybody goes, "Oh, I had no idea that you'd that was available, or that you got these results, or that this had happened." And that sort of joining up of the community, and particularly, as I say, in Europe, where we have many different countries and many different cultures and many different languages. That inter-scientist communication is really important, and we haven't really nailed the best way of doing that. I mean, there are newsletters that go out via email, but people don't necessarily read them, and it's hard to know how to do that effectively. But I mean, I think that is without that internal communication working really well, and I don't think this is a Europlanet problem. I think this is a pretty much every organisation that I've ever worked in problem, is without that internal communication, then it's really difficult to actually get the message out to anybody else in a sensible, coherent kind of way.
Yeah.
We have a couple comments. Guido Bibra points out, since someone had mentioned ISEE3, they're making another try at firing the thrusters right now. So you can follow the Twitter feed there, ISEE3 reboot, to check that out. And then Michael Jobin wanted to ask, what groups are you currently working with right now? Or what sites are you writing for? So what are the projects that have you occupied right at the moment?
So my main occupation at the moment is the Google Lunar X Prize, which I don't know whether everybody knows what that is, but
please tell. We'd love to hear about it.
It's a competition to land a robot on the moon. It's the competition for the first commercial organisation to land a robot on the moon. And we have 18 teams competing at the moment, and they have to build their robot, they have to land it on the moon, have it travel 500 meters, and send back high-definition video and imagery. And they have to complete all that by the end of 2015. So they've got a lot of work to do in the next 18 months. And then aside from that main challenge, there are sort of various other challenges that they can do, like going and imaging the Apollo heritage site. So getting that hard evidence that people have been there to the moon, showing not just the American, not just the Apollo sites, but also sort of Lunokhod rovers potentially. There's a prize for identifying water, detecting water on the moon. There's a prize for surviving the lunar night, and so it's a really interesting competition because it involves all kinds of groups that come from a huge spectrum of backgrounds. It's not just kind of your usual space scientists and engineers. That's they need those people, but the motivation is quite diverse. And just the potential opportunities for that, for opening up cheap, reliable, day-to-day access to the moon is a tremendously exciting thing. It's got implications for all of us, really. So that's kind of the day job, or one of the day jobs. The other day job at the moment is writing these proposals for Europlanet and for a couple of other consortia. And what else? Yeah, just the National Astronomy meeting, but that's gone now, so I don't have to worry about that for another year. So I mean, most of it is kind of doing the connection bit, really, between the scientists or the engineers or the team or whoever it is and the public. I don't do much, writing journalism, specific articles at the moment, but who knows in the future.
We have another question from Sylvan Westby. Recently, the BBC has asked their journalists not to invite people on their programs, the fringe or unscientific, pseudoscientific views when discussing things such as climate change. Do you have an opinion on that particular, I don't know what to call it, decision on the side of BBC?
I mean, the BBC has a role in all of our hearts in the UK, and we would like it to. It has a reputation, or has had a reputation for many years, in providing very high quality journalism. I hope that it will continue to do that. I mean, it has, as a public broadcaster, it has a responsibility to provide balance when discussing any issue. Obviously, with things like climate change, it's a contentious issue, and getting the representative view from the science community and balancing that with political issues.
You go ahead and say it's a false balance.
I don't know. I mean, obviously, obviously, as a science communicator, I would like to make sure that the science is the science as we understand it, the science as we know it is properly represented and properly communicated. I don't quite know what the BBC guidelines are, but I mean I hope very much that kind of they uphold that.
Yeah, I don't know how much this is prevalent in European media, but in the U.S. there's a very strong push towards journalism being balanced, and that means showing both sides. The problem is one side may have been shown to be quite wrong, especially in these scientific cases. So the BBC is saying, no, we're done showing, we're done talking about... Hello? Oh, this is here. I heard a horn of some sort.
I'm so sorry, that was my phone suddenly started ringing, so...
Oh, anyway. Oh, okay, I'm like, there's a horn outside. But anyway, I think it's a good step in that we're going to, you know, talk about, you can talk about both sides of a policy debate, that's fine, but you know, talking about science that's and pseudoscience and trying to balance them against each other is a tricky thing, and so I'm pretty happy they've taken that step.
Yeah.
We have a couple other. Is this Europlanet /EU.org? Is that the main website for Europlanet?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Charles. So I will share that out. I am scattered right now, but I will share that in the comments and in the show description after the show, as well as the show notes for the audio version. Adam Synergy says, you know when you see someone and think, I think I know this person somehow. He was at Leicester University in the Biological Sciences building the same time you were there.
Oh, right, sorry, probably.
So, hello. Michael Jobin adds, large publications are important to getting to the masses, whereas niche readers are the choir, so that's, you know, the science site specifically, but web writing is good. And Charles was wondering what your thoughts are on the Rosetta mission as it's heading towards Comet 67P. I'm not going to try and pronounce the rest of that.
Churyumov-Gerasimenko.
Wow, can you do that again?
Very nice.
I mean, I think the Rosetta mission is so exciting. I've been following it since before it launched, and you know, after a 10-year journey of winding up round the Earth and round Mars, we're finally there. It's sort of actually starting to come into focus. I think it's that last year it was 5 pixels. And you can see the nucleus sort of tumbling around, and it's, you know, it's so nice that it makes me proud of my space agency. I mean, the European Space Agency started off in planetary missions with Giotto, with the Giotto flyby, which happened when I was, I don't know, about 10, 12, something like that. And, you know, it's really nice to see it come of age, the planetary program come of age with this very complex mission that will really tell us a lot of new things about comets. And comets are so, you know, they're such a fascinating time capsule of all kinds of things in the solar system, allowing us to kind of look back at what was there when the solar system formed, but also sort of answering questions about, you know, where our water comes from, and where organic material comes from on Earth. So it's a tremendously exciting mission, and yeah, the orbiter is getting there really soon, isn't it? It's sort of slowly winding itself into orbit around the nucleus over the summer, and then the decision will be made where the little lander's going to dock with the nucleus in the autumn, in November. So it's going to be a fantastic few months, and I wish all of the teams, instrument teams and the mission team, very well. And you know, you can see the dedication from the from the project scientist Matt Taylor, who had a tattoo of Rosetta on his leg. So he's with it for life.
That's excellent. That's excellent. So how is the media going to deal with trying to pronounce Churyumov-Gerasimenko? Can you say it again?
Gerasimenko. I think they're just going to talk about the comet. 7P or Comet CG, who knows? They're going to have to find a way of dealing with it, or maybe it just will be one of those things that by the end of it, everybody will know. Everybody will practice. It'll be kind of like a test of
practice. Oh my goodness.
Wow. Anita, do you often go to schools? I don't know if I thought I heard you say that, or interact, with public audiences of different ages and things like that. Is that anything that you like to do?
I wouldn't say that I often go now, but I do try to go every now and then. I was at a schools event a couple of weeks ago. I recently became a trustee of a learning Space Learning Foundation. It's a charity, and we had a day where we had 100 kids from the local area who came and did all kinds of activities and had Q&As with various speakers and things. So it's nice every now and I mean I think it's really important every now and then just to go and to do that, to occasionally sort of go and talk to groups. I have been to talk to my mum's WI or something like that. It's just nice to kind of balance yourself back in the real world, because I mean otherwise you get in your little clique, you get in your group of people who and you partly get locked into the jargon. You think that everybody knows what you're going on about, and obviously they don't. But also I think it's also really important to go and talk to people who are maybe impressed and enthralled and excited about things that you can get quite blasé about, and so it's I like to go and talk to people, or have people talk to me every now and then. I was at the Interscientist a couple of weeks ago, and that was really great. It was a huge mix of people from all kinds of backgrounds, all kinds of countries, and yeah, it's nice to hear what other people are doing. Nice to hear what other scientists are doing who are studying all kinds of different fields of biomedicine or robotics or other bits and pieces. It's also good to kind of keep on top of those kind of things too.
Really fascinating. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite? I know you said you like to focus on planetary science. Do you have a favorite story or scientific finding that's come out recently that you'd like to share?
What's the most exciting one that we've had recently? We at the National Astronomy meeting. In fact, actually, at the National Astronomy meeting last week, we were talking about sort of future missions. We were talking about the successor to the James Webb Telescope, and the James Webb Telescope is huge, and it's got you watch those videos of the whole thing unfurling in this amazing kind of way. And the potential from that is amazing. That the successor to that, which I think they call At Last. I can't remember what the acronym. What's the word? Anyway, acronym.
Okay, acronym. Yes.
I can't remember what it stands for, but for that they're talking about something that's actually going to be built in orbit. And have this, enormous great mirror and be able to do all these amazing things and then get to the central laboratory. So I mean, what never fails to amaze me is the ambition that people have. We kind of do stuff, and a lot of science is incremental, and a lot of missions are kind of one step and another step and another little step. But there are also these big visions for astronomy. It would be nice if we could also have some big visions of the planetary science. I would like to see, some stories properly about going back to the moon, or preparing to go to Mars. I mean, at the moment, ESA certainly is in a bit of a hiatus for lunar programs, and NASA won't talk about the moon at all really at the moment, apart from asteroids and orbits around them. So it would be it would be as somebody that spends a lot of the time thinking about the moon, it would be nice to it would be nice to hear some stories about that.
Yes.
From a ground vision point of view.
Well, we have spacecraft at the moon now because the last administration was all about it, and then we switched because, you know, spacecraft timelines are now going to be much longer than presidential administrations in the U.S. So that definitely makes an issue. Oh, we have a question from Charles. What do you tell people when the subject of Pluto comes up, as it still does many years later, after that IAU decision, when Pluto comes up and the New Horizons mission comes up, and do you get questions about Pluto being a planet versus a dwarf planet?
Yes, and it is, with the description that we have from the IAU, it is quite complicated to explain that. I mean, I think sort of within the context of planetary science, what we tend to do is kind of more talk about the kinds of things that there are in the solar system. And so, you know, I mean, the term planet is it's almost it's sort of a historical term almost, and it doesn't necessarily mean anything. And that we have, you know, we have terrestrial planets like the Earth and Venus and Mars. But I mean, then again, Titan has a lot of things in common, or Europa or Ganymede with our kind of planets, and so it doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense to get too kind of fixated on what goes around the sun and how it goes around the sun and whether it's cleared its orbit or what have you. It's more about recognizing that there are all these different kinds of really interesting things, and because Pluto's been demoted technically as a dwarf planet, it doesn't make it any less interesting. And you know, the more we seem to be finding about these icy worlds that have seasons, and they have, you know, they are a very interesting area to research, and you know, we're really looking forward to New Horizons and actually seeing in a lot more detail about what's there. It'd be fantastic to have something better than sort of those little fuzzy blobs that you need to sort of have when you're doing your family portrait of the solar system. It would be, I can't wait to actually have proper pictures, proper maps. And as we found from missions like Cassini, and as it's been taking a look at all of Saturn's moons, all of those have thrown up all kinds of amazing surprises. And so, yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff in the solar system, and whatever you call it, it's interesting to somebody, and hopefully will be interesting to everybody once we actually see what's there.
I love it. Yeah, 2015 is going to be amazing. Between Dawn getting to Ceres and New Horizons getting to Pluto, we're going to get all the dwarf planet goodness, and we'll be pretty excited. So. I'm thrilled to look forward to that in my lifetime. I had another question and I just went blank. Oh, do you have any, this is partly self-serving, but do you have any advice for science communicators entering the field now? People who either writing or science background or both, or people who want to tell the tales of science, use these different media outlets to do so. Do you have any advice for people who are just starting out?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's possible. It's possible to make a career and a living out of doing science communication. I've managed to do that, and it's managed to keep me going. You know, not in grand style, but good enough anyway. And it's. I think what's good about it is it's a small world in terms of the number of people who are involved. It sort of is one of those fields where everybody does tend to know everybody after a while, and if you can find yourself a niche, then it works out it can work out quite well. There's a lot of word of mouth that, you know, you've worked with somebody and then somebody else is looking for somebody who's looking for the skill sets that you have. And the other brilliant thing about it is that it is a global world, a global community, and so you don't necessarily have to work for somebody within commuting distance of where you are or where you live. You can end up working. I work partly with people in LA and the rest of the world, and partly with sort of maybe people based in Paris or Bremen or where have you. So what's fantastic about it is that it's a really global mix of people. There are a lot of opportunities out there. I think there are, particularly now, a lot of opportunities in that, as I was saying, I mean, social media has suddenly come from nowhere. When we were writing the last Europlanet proposal, social media wasn't there, I mean, we didn't even consider it. It was, it just didn't kind of factor in, and sort of, halfway into the project, we suddenly had to kind of try and learn on the job. But now there are a lot of people out there like yourselves who really know what you're doing, know how to use these tools in the right way. And I think if you have that, then if you have that experience, if you have that enthusiasm, then I think there are a lot of opportunities out there. But also, I mean, the traditional stuff doesn't go away either. There are still institutions and people that need press officers. There are still astronomy magazines that need writers. There are, there are lots of opportunities for doing things.
What about advice for educators who don't have much time, but they want to share the resource? They want to share the latest space news. They want to share the latest science news with their students. What are some good resources for them to keep up with what's going on?
Okay, so there's a project called UNAWE, which is Universal Awareness, I think,
Yep.
and they have this great thing called Space Scoop, where they take press releases from organisations like European Southern Observatory, from ESA, from the Royal Astronomical Society, all kinds of places, and they will write that in a way that's accessible to kids, with the right kind of imagery, and they have all kinds of resources there. So they're really great. There are many teacher training programs out there, like the Galileo teacher training program, with wonderful, enthusiastic people who will be able to point you in the direction of a lot of resources. There's my husband's project, which is the Fulks Telescope project, which you can log on from your classroom during school hours in the UK or in European time zones, and you can choose what you want to look at, and you can make your own observations. And so, in that sense, you're kind of making the news, seeing things yourself. I mean, they have a lot of programs where they work with scientists to track specific objects, so looking for asteroids and what have you. I don't know. I mean, there are just so many resources out there. It's always really hard, and that's always a big problem, is actually trying to work out where to point people to get the best stuff. Mm-hmm. There's a platform recently launched called Astro Edu, mm-hmm. Which aims to collate activities and get them peer reviewed by teachers, so that they can kind of highlight the ones that people really find effective, and endorse ones that really work, which is, I think, a really good initiative. And otherwise, ESA, well, with Rosetta, I mean, ESA have been putting together all kinds of activities and apps and things, so that you can see where Rosetta is and what it's doing, and how it's going to interact with its comet. And they've started doing a series, I think their own series, Google Hangouts, and so that's a good way of finding out what the teams are doing. So yes, there's lots of things out there, and NASA always have a plethora of things, obviously, but yeah.
Yeah, Space Scoop is a favorite of mine. We occasionally have one of our podcasters read the Space Scoop press releases as one of our podcasts for 365 Days of Astronomy. And I think Pamela actually did a demonstration at Balticon where she read side by side a press release from an organization and the Space Scoop version of the press release, and all the adults in the room would rather read the Space Scoop version. right off the bat, because they're really careful to pick apart the jargon and use words that most people would know. Which, I mean, it's originally, I forget what actual reading level it's set for, so children can read it. But that's really helpful for adults too, because they don't always know all the jargon.
Yeah, absolutely.
The space group is definitely a favorite project of ours.
Awesome.
I'm not seeing any other questions. We have a couple of comments on what we've talked about, including the Twitter handle for Europlanet is Europlanet Media. Is that correct, Anita?
Yeah. Anita, how much social media do you personally do? I'm just curious if you've kind of embraced the Twitter and the Facebook and
not to quite real, as you will see from my Europlanet media. It's kind of a bit half-hearted is the wrong word, but I find it quite hard to do it. You know, it's just trying to fit everything in and trying to do everything that you need to do. And I think, you know, for instance, if you're at a conference, it's quite hard to tweet during the sessions unless you're really good to kind of condense everything down to 140 characters. I find that, you know, by the time that I've done that, I've kind of missed the next 15 minutes of what people have said. So
right.
I think there are, you know, as I say, there are loads of people out there that have those skills and have that talent, and you know, I'm actually quite happy to let them do that. And I understand. I think it's really important. I think that organisations need to use that. It's become such a great way of, you know, it's an opportunity to communicate directly with people, which is something that we didn't really have sort of 10 years ago. And, you know, with Twitter, with sort of retweets, you can reach, you know, not with every tweet, but every now and then you reach such a diverse group of people. But yeah, it's not really something I'm particularly good at myself.
Well, I'm kind of with you there. I'm not that great at it, and it doesn't seem really natural to me. But it's amazing, yeah, the people that do it well, and how you can get information real time is just it's an amazing part of communication these days. So,
Guido points out that the greatest thing of today's internet age is that we can all follow these missions basically in real time. And that's what a lot of the Twitter accounts are for. But it still takes communicators like Anita to make them really interesting for everyone. So thank you, Guido.
We try.
True.
I mean, sorry, I was just going to say, I mean, I think there is the other brilliant thing about social media and this kind of immediacy that people have come to kind of think of as normal means that there is now a lot of pressure on scientists to talk about what they're doing, so that it's not kind of a case of they store up all their results for 2 years until they can, you know, have a special edition in Science or Nature or whatever, and then you kind of find out everything. There is a much more there's a much better sense that they need to share, missions need to share what they're doing on a much more regular basis, and so it's you get a much better sense of sort of that day-to-day process of science, rather than just sort of, oh, we've discovered this and it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I'd like to end with a bit of business. First of all, well, we had a comment from Michael wondering if Georgia had been to Convergence, and Georgia did not go to Convergence.
I know, yeah.
But as a big sci-fi fan, have you? Because I don't think we've been to any cons together. Have you been to any science?
No, I was going to say I saw that comment, not to get too off track, but no, I have never been to a con.
Oh, we need to fix that.
So that's just on my list of things to do someday. But yes, I love sci-fi and all that. I would have a blast, I'm sure. Maybe be completely overwhelmed and have to go hide in a corner somewhere. But
we won't take you to Dragon Con as your first con, because I did that, and that was, wow.
Yeah.
But it's becoming more and more of a great place to do science outreach.
Yeah, that's the really cool thing about it, is you get the science part, and you can have the sci-fi part, and have a whole lot of fun.
Yes,
reach
definitely.
all kinds of people that way. So
Definitely.
yeah, I'll go someday.
Yay! Yes, we will get you to a con. We'll start local. Maybe we'll start local. We have next week. We are taking off from the live show as we've got travel and things happening. I'm gonna try and get a video up for next Wednesday for something for you. I'm probably gonna poke at my friends who are at Convergence and see if they have any good video or audio content they'd be happy to share with Learning Space. I know there's a bit out there. I didn't take much video myself as I was running from panel to panel. But we'll try and get some kind of video content up there by Wednesday for you to enjoy. But next week there'll be no live show for Learning Space. Astronomy Cast, as Guido pointed out, posted on Google Plus the listing of all the space hangouts happening on Google Plus, which is amazing. And I'll have to dig that back out of my email and share that in the show notes as well. Learning Space will be on hiatus for 1 week. Astronomy Cast is on hiatus for the summer. Weekly Space Hangouts on hiatus for the summer. And Virtual Star Parties on a monthly format. It looks like they're doing the first Sunday of every month as their show time. So I will be adding that to our regular schedule. But I will put the link to Guido's post because he lists all the upcoming Deep Astronomy Hangouts and the Hubble News Hangouts and all the other fun places you can get your space stuff. And we'll be back in 2 weeks. We'll be talking with Michelle Prisby of University of Virginia about bringing science outreach from the university to the community, since that is something she is spearheading over at University of Virginia. She started after I left, unfortunately, so I didn't get to work with her directly, but that'll be a fun conversation there. Nancy says you should come to Geek Girl Con, Georgia.
Woohoo!
Seattle, October. I'm going.
All right, maybe. You never know. I could shock everybody and just show up.
It's fun. We have a do-it-yourself science zone. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Anita, so much. Maybe you want to share a few places people can find you and your work or contact you.
It's been great. Thank you.
Yeah. Do you have any places people could see your work or contact you? Like.
Yes, you can find me all over the place. I mean, if you Google me, I mean, my contact details I think are all over the place.
Okay.
But you can contact me through Europlanet Media, Twitter, or you can find my contact details online or through XPrize or wherever.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you everybody for joining us on your rainy or hot and humid days. That was it for Learning Space. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Anita.
Thank you.
All right.